Hello, everybody. So we're into module 8 now, last week of the semester. Wrapping things up quickly. Just have some odds and ends to go over. We've covered all of our learning objectives for the course. There's just something, might take a moment to look at this. I usually say something at the beginning and then near the end of about a course. So not just for our course, but if I head over to Ivy Learn, in every course you take at Ivy Tech, there are certain things that are required to be in the syllabus. And once this pulls up, one of those things is a section called Major Course Learning Objectives. The thing, which like the name implies, that's the things we are supposed to be learning in the course. Very important for courses like this that have prerequisites, right? You have to take this course in order to get into the language specific software development course at the 200 level, and then all of the stuff, all of the interesting things happening at the 200 level for the software development. But somewhere on this syllabus in every class will be the course outline of record, just the description. Has the general description and all that stuff about the course, but then this section, major course learning objectives. They're often vague and kind of open for interpretation. But when you look at this list, you always want to look at this list near the end of the semester. If there's anything on this list that you're not sure about, that's a question you want to ask. Especially if the course is a prerequisite for something else. When you go into that next course, they're going to expect that you learn the major course learning objectives from the prerequisite. So this one's all about just kind of software development, continuing from SDEV 120. Things are kind of vague, but I feel like we've gone through all the items on that list. But for our course and any other one, make sure you always look through that list, and I guess one way to put it is make sure you feel like you got your money's worth, right? That's the list of things that you're buying when you take a college course and pay the tuition. So you want to check and make sure you feel like you got your money's worth out of the course. You feel like you learned those things, and then the other one is going into subsequent courses, they're probably going to expect that you know those things. So having gone through those, kind of going to fill some time this week with odds and ends that will be useful. Had a couple in mind tonight that relate to Python, but in general, both tonight and Wednesday, which will wrap up our class lecture session time, it's going to be very short nights. We'll probably only go to about 7 o'clock. And then most of our time, well, as usual, then I'll be sitting here, sitting by a computer waiting for somebody to ask questions until 8:50, our scheduled time. And you can ask me questions anytime, but during that block of time that's scheduled to be our class, that's when I'm just sitting by a computer waiting on questions to come my way. We'll be kind of short nights looking at odds and ends, things I think will be useful. And then most of our time can be spent working on wrapping things up. Final projects, there's a final exam. It is open now. Final projects, past due assignments. The semester ends at 11:59 p.m. on this coming Sunday. That's the date that was on the schedule when you register for the course. Okay. Our semester ends December 18th, and we'll go all the way to the end of the day. The latest time I can click the schedule for in Ivy Learn when I set up the due dates and stuff is 11:59 p.m. So at 11:59 p.m. on December 18th, all of the assignments will close and lock. You can't submit anything after that. I never accept late submissions, and I don't give incompletes. So please try to get everything to me before that final cutoff. Well, before that, long before that is better, right? think everybody's experienced things like internet going down unexpectedly. That's at 11:59 PM on a Sunday, so somebody could have a car crash near your house and knock down a utility pole and then you don't have any electricity. So if you're waiting to the very, very last minute, little things can happen and nothing will be accepted after that deadline. Then on Monday morning, I'll wake up and finish whatever grading is left and submit grades, and I wake up early. So I'm usually finished by 7 o'clock. You finish all the grading, get the grades submitted long before most IT people wake up. So make sure you get everything to me before that cutoff. What can we open back up stuff? Oh, quizzes. Some of the quizzes might be closed. If you missed a quiz, got overwhelmed and it's gifted and then that one closed on you, let me know. Open that back up, retake it, or maybe if there's a quiz that you did really, really bad on and it's locked, let me know. I can open it back up and improve the score a little. But in general, I think everybody in here was doing okay, doing pretty good. Last time I looked at the grade book. Yeah, if you need anything, just get a hold of me about it. Try to get everything to me before then. So just to fill a little bit of time before we kind of split off into just a couple hours that were already blocked off on your schedule where you can just sit and work on final projects or past due assignments or something. There was one other thing that I wanted to share that would be useful. A question in the chat room. What is the new tech report? That's the one that was originally put in module 1 and probably hasn't been mentioned since then, has it? So for that, an important aspect in any field, not just IT, but no matter where you're at, you want to stay up to date on that field. It's a little more important in IT because things change quickly. IT changes a whole lot quicker than some of the other fields, but we want to stay up to date on that. So it's kind of practice doing that. I give this same assignment in almost all my classes. I took it out of the game development class because half of the people in that class are also in this class, and there's no need to do that twice. Oh, lastly, kind of announcements. Under modules, it was one of those that I think was put in module 1. Is it not in module 1? Oh, it should have been in module 1, but I don't see it for some reason. I go to assignments, it should be there. So just a short report. I'll put it in module 7 thing. It should have been in module 1, but I don't know why it seems to have gotten removed. Doesn't seem to have been there. A short report, 1 to 2 pages, really a paragraph on each one. And you just want to write about some of the new technology in the field from the last 6 months or so. And say, right, there's alternative formats. It's a report. It's not an essay. You don't have to try to make a point with the research. Just say what some new thing is, right? NVIDIA did their big conference 6 months ago, and they had all kinds of neat stuff. What I think was neatest there was actually Betsy. NVIDIA, Betsy. Someone know what? Yeah.
And 1 cup are mercury to
Can y'all hear the audio there? So, an AI model that can track every single on the ranch.
models.
Basically, it can track every animal on a ranch. You got a 500-acre ranch with thousands of cattle, dozens of horses, thousands of chickens. It can track every single one of them and keep a report on all of them. I thought that was one of the most fascinating things. It got a little side note in the NVIDIA conference. NVIDIA, they were talking about the new game stuff. I was just like, I was blown away by that. So that's some really interesting new technology. It's going to greatly benefit a lot of farmers in the world or veterinarians, right? Even on a small farm, would a veterinarian be able to check every single animal in the herd while he's doing that? But if there's an AI that is monitoring them 24 hours a day, it's already sending health reports to the veterinarian for every single animal on the farm before it gets there. So really useful technology. But it's just a simple report. You're not doing in-depth research and using that to try to make a new point. You're just reporting on what's out there. You're like, yeah, NVIDIA released this. What else has come out in the last 6 months? Python 3.11 came out. And just so you can just make a video like you're doing a news report. That might be a good description of the difference between a report and an essay, right? Like that news report, just say that it happened. But just look at 3 new technologies, or a blog format, or I think some of y'all have heard me say before, I get bored with the old essay thing. Essays haven't changed since that, what we type in Microsoft Word, that format hasn't changed since before computers existed. We can do way better than that. But in short, for that assignment, you just want to write about 3 new technologies. And technology is constantly being updated. I put some links here. Since this is a software development class, something about software development would be preferred, or we spent more than half our time on Python. The stuff we're going to look at tonight's on Python. So maybe something about Python would be good. I put some links to software development news, some of the standard, which if you're heading into software development, you might want to just save these links anyway, because this is like the software development news sources. So something like this. I guess we read that Creatio. I've never heard of that software, but it builds up. They speed up building of no-code apps. So some new technology for the low-code or no-code solutions, where we're dragging our mouse around and it writes the code. Do they have any pictures or anything? Yeah, I don't know that particular one. Oh, here's a link to it. Let me open that link and see what's there. They probably have a picture so we can see what it is. Yeah, so we get this dashboard that looks like this. We have this big dashboard to work with. I was just looking to see if there's pictures here, so we can see if it's like a flowchart thing or. Oh, yeah, so it looks like that dashboard is the working area. So we work in a dashboard and then it writes the code in the background. And we put together, we have a way to assemble the logic, because machines are actually better than humans at typing. Right? We make typos constantly, but machines never make typos. The only time machines make typos is if it's in the debugging process, and that was actually us that made a typo. The machine typed exactly what we told it to. So, but what machines can't do is put together an algorithm. So all the human really has to do is put together an algorithm, and then the machine can write all the code for us. And give us nice graphics and stuff to keep track of it. What else has come out recently? Something about automation, future of developer enablement and security. That sounds like it might be useful. Shaker open source, and you see, it's a bunch of news articles about everything that's happened in software development recently. So look for 3 that you find interesting and just write a paragraph or so on each one. 1 or 2 paragraphs, give a quick summary of it, say why you think it's important for the field. And the point of it is just to I'll put it in module 7. If you can't find it, it's in their assignments. You can get to everything that way. Or I'll put it in module 7 so you can find everything. It should have been in module 1. And it was somewhere else because I came in and edited it earlier this semester. But I can't remember when I edited it. I put a reminder in, but it's in module 7 now, which is the one you should be looking at for this week. But that's just a small one. That applies to any field, not just software development. If you want to stay up to date on your field, right? So if you decide you don't like IT and switch over to accounting, you want to stay up to date on the field of accounting. That's across the industry thing. So just look at a couple things and write about a paragraph on each one. It was mentioned somewhere earlier in the semester, and whenever it was mentioned earlier, I went in and edited it. Because that's when I noticed I copied the wrong thing. I did that a few times in our course shell. I was putting together 2 different versions of them to compare, and then I copied and pasted, and several times I think I copied the wrong, I appeared to have copied and pasted the wrong thing. The Python essay was in module 1. It should have been right beside the Python essay. Maybe I removed it when I edited it and created a new one or something, forgot to put it back. Sorry about that, but that'll be a really short one. So like, yeah, really 3 paragraphs. Just write a paragraph on each, a paragraph summarizing what it is for 3 different technologies. Does that answer your question? I usually put that in almost all of my classes, but since so many people are in 2 classes that are like back to back this semester, I took it out of the other one and left it in here. I think, unless I left it in game dev too. But that's a regular assignment I give just because it's important to stay up to date on the field. Okay, so now just some things that will be useful. That we haven't really seen, and I'm going to jump back to Python and look at this here. Something useful in Python, which hopefully won't take too long to open. And this has to do with files. So what we saw earlier this semester, remember I made a big deal about that subtle difference between files and file handlers. Our textbook always termed that incorrectly. A file handler is what we use to read and write a file. But that's not the file itself. The file itself, the entire file, is what we would get from File Explorer. So we come over here, navigate into the documents folder, and into the delete folder, and then that's the file. And we have to have another piece of software to work with the file. We have to have another piece of software that includes a file handler, or all we can do is look at the icon for that. We have to open it with something. So that's the difference between files and file handlers. And since we really haven't talked about it, I wanted to make sure and look at that. Yeah. So we get most of that stuff from two modules. From OS, we're going to import a couple things. And then come down right to the next line. Also from os.path, we're going to import a couple things. So the ones we're going to use most often, from OS, that stands for operating system. So that module has a whole bunch of things so that we can reach back and directly interact with the operating system we're running on. But the one that I thought would be most useful to fill our time with the odds and ends would be dealing with files. So there's a couple in here. I'm going to add make dirs, make directories. There's also a make directory without the S on the end, make dir, but it can only make one folder at a time. And we might want to have something that's nested like 3 folders deep. And we might need several folders to put something. So if we do the plural one, it will do the entire, it will make all the folders along the directory path, yes. And the one without the S will only make one folder at a time. Usually go ahead and bring in the S. That statement will make more sense when we see it. And we also want to bring in list dir, list directory. That's a really useful one. We'll see it in action here in a second. And I chose this model, this import one, so you can see which one comes from which model. But in general, we would probably import everything from both of them. That's the actual action. So it would say from OS import asterisk, from os.path import asterisk. Then we have all of them. But there's 4 here that I really wanted to look at. So make dirs, that's where we need in order to make new folders, right? We saw how to write a file, and we can put that in the same spot if we just use the file name. Or we can put an address and send it to any folder on our computer. But what we didn't see was how to put it into new folders. We can only put it in already existing folders, so we might need to make a folder. Or we might need to list out everything in a folder to see if the folder we want to make exists before we go and make it. That's what those are. And os.path has quite a few things. 2 I'm going to use is dir and is file. They're both methods, but from the name of that, you should be able to tell what each one does. And typically, we wouldn't need both of them, right? Because if something's not a directory, then it's a file. Or if it's not a file, we can check if it's a file, and if it's not a file, then it's a directory. So we would just do if else with just one condition, but I'll go ahead and put both of them here. Normally, we would only need one of those. And then we can look to see what's files, what's folders, and look around to see if stuff exists before we go overwriting it or trying to make a new one, right? If our software is set to overwrite a file, we don't want to accidentally erase something. So we need to make sure it's not there first. Or we saw how to write a file and store it in the same location or into an already existing folder on our computer, but we didn't see how to make a folder. So we might want to see some of those things. So let's see, I'll put this in a function. So well, I'll just put it down here. I'll just type it directly. So our folder is going to be stored somewhere. Well, maybe this would be better function. Define function check directory. And into that directory, we're going to need the path to where it's at. And I'll start with this list dir. We want to see what all is in a folder whenever we go looking at stuff. Kind of the same thing we do when we open File Explorer and click around through our folders looking for things. It can be useful to have the script do that. Well, if we look at this, In the documents folder, what do we have? A bunch of stuff, right? So we need to turn that into a list so that we can loop through it and check them one at a time. So that's what lister is. So we say for item in lister, and then list the path that we're looking at. And do I guess I'll just print it. Print item. That way we can just see what it is. I'll go save this. System stuff. .py. So now if we call that function called check directory, and we need some sort of file path, which will go in as a string. If you're on a Windows system, you should probably be using backslash. The backslash is our escape sequence, so really when we go to type that, we need 2 backslashes every time. So C drive, the users folder. But with Python, we can also just use a /, and Python will automatically adjust that. Well, there's actually a function in the OS module that will automatically adjust it. But since Python like 3.3, it has been automatically at the language. So if we use a backslash and run it on a Windows system, or if we use a / and run it on a Windows system, it automatically turns that into backslashes. And if we run the same code on a Linux system, it keeps it as /. So there's a built-in thing in OS that adjusts that, but it has been automatically part of the language for a while now. So in C drive, on mine I have the users folder, and then my particular user, and then I'll look at the documents folder. So this should print out everything in that documents folder. Something about templates, that delete folder where I do most of the work. So some desktop stuff, which I think is a hidden folder, hidden file. Yeah, I don't see anything here called desktop.ini. So it also shows the hidden files. You can see we get that whole list. And yeah, might as well go ahead and look at these others. Let's check things. So like if is there item, we'll print the item name plus a couple dashes, and then couple dashes, and then it's a directory. And I'm going to go ahead and write elif to see what both of them are for the example, but we only have 2 cases, right? If it's not a directory, then it's a file. If it's not a file, it's a directory. But we can check either one. So normally we would do if else. But for the sake of the example, I'm just going to write elif to do both conditions. If it's not a directory, is it a file? And in that case, we'll print whatever the item is plus this one's a file. So if we run this same code again, and notice that nothing happened yet, though. What I was talking about probably all made sense, but there is a slight issue. Because, well, we can see it here. All of this stuff all it gives us is the name of that file or the name of that folder. But if I come to that folder over here, this is the easiest mistake to make when making this. Delete isn't just the name of the folder, right? That's at the very end of the name. The name of the folder would be all of this stuff up here in the address bar. In order to identify that particular folder, we need C drive / users / Frank / documents / delete. So we're missing that part. So we could type it in here, which what I usually do is just do path plus a slash plus the item. That's all we're really doing. There's also a join command built in. We can do os.join. And then we want to join path to the file name, which is nice and formal. But for the introduction version, I'm just going to concatenate it together as a string. The join one's a little bit better, but I don't want to dive super deep into the definition of what's going on with those. And same thing on this one. What we want to check isn't just the name of that item. We want to check the entire file path to get to that item. Now when we run that, well, it ran into a few things. Wait, I didn't miss that one. If his directory, the path that we're looking at, because there are definitely directories in there. I need a slash at the end. Let me try it with that join method, see if that works. It is in the OS module. So check, whoops. We want to join some stuff together. So we want to join the path and concatenate the item onto the end of it. Like I said, others. Maybe join is down here. It's in one of, okay, there it is. So notice that it worked that way. I'll just throw that error out. If we tried to type it in directly, it worked fine for the file, but it was giving us problems for the directory. So we kind of have to know what we're looking for, and that would work fine for the second one as well. Sorry, I thought join was in OS. Usually I just import everything in both of those modules. There we go. We run that. We get that list seeing that some things are a directory and some things are a file. We could start nesting loops there so that if we find a directory, we actually want to go into that directory and loop through everything in it. And eventually we can walk all the way through our entire directory structure on the computer way quicker than a human could do it by clicking around with the mouse and look for every single file on there and see if we can find a particular one. And that's set up as a method, so we could just add some stuff here. So maybe go in the delete folder and do that. Then we can do some stuff. So here's all the, oops, not clear there, clear here. So here's everything in the delete folder. I haven't emptied that out in a moment because I knew we were going to talk about this at some point. there's some folders, some files. I use the plus signs and minus signs to kind of keep them straight at a glance. And we know how to create a new file there, right? Creating a new file is no problem. So I'm gonna say working directory equals all of this. And then I'll use working directory so I can do some other stuff with it. So we have that list, or maybe we can just count how many items it is. I'm gonna add a counter in. Counter starts at 0. Folder counter starts at 0, and file counter starts at 0. And then here we can say folder counter increments by 1, and down here, file counter increments by 1. And then after we're done, we can just print out that, right? So print folders plus folder counter plus a comma, and then we say file plus that file counter. Whoops. I think I'm missing a parenthesis. It won't scroll over far enough to see clearly, but that way we get a count of how many things there is. There we go. We see there's 2 files, 2 folders, 21 files. And then we had some other stuff. So we've seen how to list things out, loop through them. And obviously you would probably have a series of nested selection structures to find a particular folder or file, right? Also passing the parameter of the folder you're looking for, look through everything. We could probably fit that in before 7:15. There's still one more thing we haven't done yet, and that's the make directories. So we have our list here. See the total that's there. And we know how to create a new file, right? Creating a new file requires a file handler. So we have to convert things to text or binary subformat and then store them there. But creating a folder, we haven't seen that yet. So if we wanted to write a file, I'll do it where it goes there. So with open working directory, I'll use join since it's there. Join working directory with a new folder called I'll use the relative addressing. So from where we're at, open a folder called newest stuff, and then in that we'll open a file called more stuff.txt for writing to S2 file. This is all stuff we've seen before, right? Then we can just say to file dot write line. No, write line. Or I'll say write. To file dot write. Here are some words for the file. With a line feed at the end, and then that'll probably be good. So we run this, we get an error message. All the stuff there should look familiar, except that we added another folder in that line, right? We left off the name stuff folder did not exist. So that's enough to create a file, but not a directory. And notice our error message, it can't really tell what it could create. I'm gonna move that out of the way so you can see that on the DV. No such file or directory. The computer doesn't know what it couldn't find. Like couldn't find something there. I did that on purpose so that I know it is the directory it couldn't find. So that's where that make ders comes in. Make ders, make directories, and if you use the one with the S, you can do a whole bunch of directories at once. Put a whole bunch of folder names with slashes, and it will create them all the way down. If you do the one without the S, you have to create them one at a time. But if you have the one with the S, you can also create one folder. So I always just use that one with the S instead of risking messing it up somewhere else. And here we can make that newest stuff folder. And notice it's relative addressing. So relative to where we currently are, we're going to make another folder called new stuff. And then we're going to go in that new stuff folder and do the more stuff text file. And check directory. Actually, I'll do this. After we write that file, I'll call that check directory. The same one we had before. That way we can see there should be more stuff in it. And then we can say check directory. I'll use the join method again instead of typing it. Join our working directory with the folder called new stuff. To just make it a little bit longer. And it helps if I spell that correctly. But in short, it's all the working with files and folders. Right? To relate it back to the command prompt, I'll just open PowerShell and type the old command prompt ones in here because I think you've probably seen the command prompt ones, right? So we can do CD, change directory, or current directory. We can change the directory we're working in, change directory to documents /delete. Then we can list out all the stuff in the directory. I'm using Linux commands. I should probably use the Windows commands. We can list out all the stuff in the directory. We can make new items, make dir. There's also a remove dir. You want to be a little bit more careful. Having seen the name for make dirs, you probably figure out what the method for remove dirs is. Or you can just ask for it, right? We would import OS. Oh, I don't know why I just did that. Import the OS module over here in the console, then we can call up the directory listing of OS, and here's all the methods we have in the OS module. That looks an awful lot like what we just typed in the console, right? So we also have a remove directory. The command for that, if you haven't seen that yet, you can do that on any of your modules, or if you type dir without any parentheses, you get all the default methods you have available in Python without any imports, which is a lot. So you probably wanted to restrict it somewhat. But dir and list that the directory listing of the OS module. And that tells us everything that's in there. All of the constants, all of the those double underscore methods, followed by single underscore methods, which do something different. We haven't really talked about any of those this semester. Followed by all of the methods we have, so the ABC method, the import method, the access, the alt set, the change directory. For Linux users or Mac users, change mode. because you gotta have the right permissions on your file for anything you do. We can do that right from our Python script. And it's all in the OS module or the OS path. We can open a folder, we can pipe stuff. Those who worked with command prompts before, we can pipe commands from the current program to another program. That's what pipe means. That's what that vertical bar on the key above the enter key, that's what that's actually for. It means take the output and send the out. Take the output of one process or program, one piece of software, and then the pipe symbol, and then another piece of software, and then the output from the first one gets sent into the input of the second software. That's an important thing you will see more and more. We can replace, rename. I guess rename's pretty useful too. We're getting near the end, but you can see what's on that list, and walk goes through kind of is a different way to cycle through. At the very least, that gives you shows you how to pull up the keywords. But here we'll just make that new directory, write the file to it, and we've already seen writing files. We couldn't write files into a new folder, but that's something we would probably want to do with our software, right? If I come over here and look at the documents folder, I did a factory reset right before the semester started, and I did not create a folder called Game Maker Studio. When I created that software and ran it for the first time, it automatically created that folder in order to store the projects in it. Same thing with GDevelop. I did not make a folder called GDevelop. First time I ran the software and tried to save a file, it automatically created that folder as a default place to put things. Or Godot, NetBeans. Yeah, almost all of these sound recordings, that comes from Zoom. The Zoom folder, that's all at the end of the night, the stuff from the chat room goes in there. Sometimes, but not always. I haven't figured out the difference between it. Or Unity. We probably want our software to do that on its own, right? Give the user a default place to store the files that go with the software we wrote for them. So that's a very useful one that some of you. Oh, and notice what happened when the way I can calculate that on there. It seemed to have got lost because I explicitly used forward slashes when I typed out the working directory. But then when I used join, it noticed it was running on a Windows machine and used backslashes. So that one should probably be concatenated. Let me do that. I almost never use join. So say working directory. I'm just used to using strings. So the working directory concatenated with / new stuff. Oh, extra parentheses. And did it create it the first time I ran it? I'm gonna delete that so that we're back in this situation where it doesn't exist yet. Now when we run that, oh, I didn't like that. Oh, newest stuff. I guess that was probably the problem the first time. Is it? I just directly typed the wrong name for that file. Okay, so let me delete that again so we can look at the rest of the output. When we run it, there we go. That time it all ran. So first, it looked through there, and there should be a counter here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So first we had 2 folders and 21 files. We made that other one, and now we should have 3 folders and 21 files. And when we look in it, we don't have any more folders, but we have 1 file. I can go over to File Explorer and look at the pictures, but that's how we do that in our code, because sometimes we need to do that. That's something we do all the time working with the computer, right? We have to go click around on folders and figure out where's this. So these are the methods that you need in order to do that for your script. Who is in different programs? A key, you're a network infrastructure person. This is what you'll be doing mostly. This is what you'll be doing a lot of. Kind of like, well, then you can write your scripts in Python instead of the old shell script that was developed in the 70s. And it's hard to work with compared to the modern programming languages. But that is just a very common thing to work with. As always, I did a stripped down basic example, just see the core syntax there, so that you can start messing around with it. You can start building better selection structures that would top the list if you want to spend our time sitting looking at new stuff instead of working on past new projects or working on your projects or on them. Recommend playing around with that and digging around the directory structure on your computer, because that is something that's going to be important. At the very least, when you write files, you want to be able to make a folder to put those files in as well. One other one that I had on the list, which is a popular a couple things that we will need for this. Let me add a comment. So I'm going to put this on GitHub. Dig through the directory structure. Dig through the folders and files on the computer. Another thing we might need is the sys module. Well, right here we're importing a bunch of modules. Where does it look for those? How does the computer know to go find where it can go find those? How much homework did we add that where that showed up? It definitely showed up in that one homework assignment, right? We had to make the class, define the class in one file and then import it into another file. But how does the computer know where to find it? And when you submitted, it was probably because they were in the same folder. So it was looking right there. So it looks in the same folder. But so like OS for operating system, sys is also refers to the system we're running on. We're in that in the console. So import sys. One of the most important ones is sys.path. Okay, it looks like a mess from all those backslashes. So remember, those backslashes are just escape sequences because I'm running this on a Windows machine. That is just a directory structure, so try to read that as like 1 slash each time. But we can see the square bracket at the end, so this is a list. We know how to work with lists. And you can see it's a long list of directory structures. So the first place we're going to look is the very first place it's going to look in where the Python programming language is installed. It's going to look users, current user, app data, local programs, Python/Python, and then some numbers for whichever version you're on. But that's where Python always gets installed. So it's going to look there first, the actual language. If it can't find it, it's going to look at the DLLs. That's already compiled language. That's basically modules built for a particular machine. So that's how we can have cross-platform stuff, is the code to adjust for like my HP versus one of the Dells here in the classroom, or the MacBook in my backpack, or whatever the computer in my office is. Right? We run the same Python code on every one because in the background, somebody already put the machine specific stuff, so then we can use those libraries to translate the general stuff into that machine specific one for the particular CPU and registers it's running on. Then it's going to look at another place in that library, another place where Python's installed. This fourth one down here, site packages. If you've never dug through and looked, that when you say pip install some module, it goes into this folder called site packages. So like the fourth thing down is it's going to look where pip installed stuff. And we see this big long list. And right before we check where pip installed stuff, we look at a blank line, which seems odd, but that blank one gets filled in later. That automatically gets filled in with wherever we are currently running at. So that's kind of like the relative address, like we did down here. We started at the location we're running the file from. So if we look to just an empty string, then that's looking at the current folder. So like in your car class homework, that's the one on the list that allowed it to find the car class, because it looks at the same folder. And then some other stuff. But the big thing is that might not be everywhere. If we're gonna organize our code nicely, let me pull up something I get. Oh, this one will have a lot of folders. So this one is a game engine. It's actually several engines. It's a graphical user interface for several popular game engines written in Python. That way we can drag our mouse around and it writes Python code. But there's a bunch of different folders, right? So how's the stuff from the GUI gonna know to look up 2 folders and into this other folder to figure out where it needs to find the files, where it's going to find the dependencies, in case it needs to automatically install a module that isn't already installed in the local installation of Python. But there's a lot of folders, and it looks like everything on that list is just sort of included somewhere. But it's a list, we can append things to it. So that's one of the big ones. Add a directory to look for other or Python modules to import with. And that would be sys.path. Sys.path is a list, so we can append, or if we're manually adding it, append goes to the end of the list. If we are manually adding it, it's probably because we know for absolute certain that we're going to look there and grab that module. So most people, instead of append, prefer to use insert, because insert takes 2 parameters. Instead of just the path we want to append to that list, we also put an index of where we want it to be. So we can say index 0, and then we put it at the very beginning of the list, and then we don't have to wait for our CPU to dig through all those other folders before looking at the one where we most certainly know it's at. So most people prefer the insert instead of append. But either way, we just need to add something to that list. Do I have anything here I can import? Most, I don't remember what that is. But there is something in the C drive, users folder, the link, documents/delete. We can look there and comment that out first and try to say like import most, which I just looked, and there is I have a Python script there called most. So I should be able to import it. when I run this, forgot, we should probably do a selection structure. I'll deal with that error in a second. Did it import successfully? Let's deal with that error so we can see the error message I was actually looking for. So if not is there join working directory with newest stuff. If it's not already a directory, then make that directory. Why doesn't it like that? Oh. There we go, that took care of that error. Okay, that's weird. Apparently there's an official thing called most. I don't think I've ever used that module or ever encountered it, but it knew what to import there. What else do I have in my, what else do I have over here? Those are the only Python scripts I have, aren't make a new Python script. New Python script. And save this. Untitled. Yeah. There's no way there's a module called untitled. So import untitled. It's still ran. Oh, because I'm in the same folder, that's why. I can do this with the most one. So let me take most. And I'll cut it from here and move it up a directory. I'll paste it there. So now if I run that, there we go. I forgot about the whole same directory thing, even though we just talked about that. There's no module named most, but I know for certain that that module is located in my documents folder. So I could append it to the end of the list, but the computer's going to do things in order, right? That's a whole lot of directories that the computer needs to dig through and check every single file of when I already know where it is. So I personally like that as well. Use insert instead of append. That way it's at the beginning of the list, so we don't waste time looking through every folder and file on the computer. Now when we run it, what list object has insert? Oh, it's just a little typo. There we go. That time it found it. There's no error messages saying it doesn't exist. So we aren't restricted to just working in that one folder. That's kind of an important thing. We can extend it with pad. Another one that's useful and usually done in the command prompt, or not the command prompt, in the Python interpreter with the 3 angle brackets or the IPython console, is you can import sys and then sys.version to see which version of Python you're working with. It's kind of useful to know that, right? Sometimes it's important to know which version of Python we're in, because Python's dynamic. Functions get removed and other functions get added, and sometimes things get changed and they'll keep the same name, but it'll make adjustments to parameters. So those are the two things that I found over the decades sys gets used for the most often. Just quickly throw in the IPython console or interpreter, or whatever your console is. just do a quick check of the version to make sure you're using the right the version of the language you thought you were, or use it to insert another place to look for Python. That way we don't have to work in just one file. And then the OS stuff is kind of straightforward. That would be my recommendation for lab time this evening. If you don't have other assignments pressing, that would be one of the most useful ones to press around with. So writing files, but writing files isn't kind of enough. Isn't quite enough, right? We kind of need places to put those files for various reasons. But that summarizes the few things I was wanting to look at here. The os.path, and the system are very, very useful. And then I can't remember if we looked at it already or not. So remember, we can also go over to the console or the one with 3 angle brackets, whichever one we're actually running our code in, and ask for the directory listing of everything in that module. And then we get a list of all the method names that that module has and variables. We get a list of everything in that pipe. So that can be really useful. I don't think we saw that. And so what was that? Yeah, I think that was everything I wanted to look at. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, I assume 5 seconds of silence means no questions. I was hoping to end about 1 minute ago. Actually about 1.5 minutes ago now. But that leaves, I'll still say, that leaves us an hour and a half in our scheduled block of time to just do stuff. As always, I will be just sitting here waiting for questions to come my way. If everybody leaves that's on campus, I will probably head back to Clarksville. Otherwise, I'll just be sitting in my office grading essays because I have a whole bunch of essays to grade this week. I'm way behind. It's like, I guess I'm not really behind. They were only due yesterday, but online classes are huge. So when everybody in the online class has a 15-page essay to write, there's a lot of stuff to grade. So I would just be sitting in my office doing that, probably well past 9 o'clock. I might drive back to Clarksville. I'm not sure if I'm myself or less than the last person to get this. Otherwise, I'll just be sitting here waiting for questions to come my way until the end of our scheduled time. So if nobody has any questions, I guess that's it for this evening. Wednesday will be our last night of class, and it's going to be some odds and ends like this. If you have something you would like me to go over in particular, let me know. Send me a message. And since we're just covering odds and ends, I guess I can take requests like a radio DJ or something and work that into the class lecture on Thursday. Otherwise, you all have a great night. I'll see you Wednesday.
Thank you.